to the You Can Do This podcast, all about living well with COPD or another chronic lung disease. This podcast is brought to you by Breathe Strong America, breathestrongamerica.org. The topic of our podcast today is your relationship with others and the need to love and be loved. I'm Jane Martin, a respiratory therapist, educator, writer, and author. And for the last 35 plus years, I've spent a lot of time listening to, learning from, and writing about people with COPD and other chronic lung diseases. I've learned a lot along the way, things that have helped my patients better understand what's going on in their lungs, how to manage their COPD, and live their best possible quality of life. Each week here on the podcast, we have a special guest. Today, we're so glad to have with us Karen Deitemeyer. Karen is a lady with COPD. She was diagnosed in 2001. She retired in 2008, and shortly after that, she found out she had breast cancer. So she began advocating for patients with chronic disease. And in 2010, she met John Walsh, the founder of the COPD Foundation. She realized that there was a lot to do, and at that point, she focused her advocacy on COPD. Having to do with our topic for today, I need to tell you that Karen lost her husband, Bill, about 4 years ago. Karen is from Florida, and we're glad to have Karen today. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate the opportunity.
Today on this special Valentine's Day podcast, we're going to focus on dealing with changes brought on by chronic lung disease in two ways that it affects our relationship with others. One is everyday life around the house, chores, cooking and eating, self-care, which is bathing, taking a shower, getting dressed, and going to social activities. And the other thing is the physical intimacy or sex. Here are some questions. Do you ever feel that having COPD or another chronic lung disease makes it hard to feel lovable? Maybe sometimes you just don't feel well. Maybe sometimes you don't think you look very good. Many times you might think that you can't do what you once could. Do you sometimes sense that you're on the outside of a normal, healthy world looking in? It's important to believe that we are loved and lovable. And this might be one of the most challenging aspects of living with COPD or another chronic lung disease. You know, with or without a chronic lung disease, we often tend to be less caring of ourselves than of those around us. And the less we value ourselves, the harder it is to share our loving feelings with others. It's a basic human need to love and be loved. And if that need is not met, we become stressed. Even if we don't realize we are stressed, we really are, because this type of stress can cause us to withdraw from those around us and turn in on ourselves as we're less active and we're more short of breath. And loneliness can lead to further illness. Jovan Tucker, a lady with COPD, said, "Those of us with COPD may not be aware of the impact our disease has on those around us, especially those closest to us, spouse, friends, and family. We often find ourselves more dependent on others as the disease progresses, and we find we're unable to continue sharing equally in household responsibilities. The small chores we've always done are no longer within our abilities due to shortness of breath. When this happens, we may become angry, hurt, and resentful. Our spouses and family members might also feel angry and resentful without even knowing it. What we have then is one person becomes angry at being so dependent, and the other one is angry at being so depended upon. Adding to this, guilt. Guilt on the part of the person with COPD because feelings of inadequacy for having to rely so heavily on the other person, and guilt on the part of the other person for resenting the added responsibilities. This is a lot to think about. It's a lot to deal with day after day. Here are some questions. Do you sometimes try to do things that you know you're not up to doing, then you have trouble with your breathing, and then wish you had asked for help? Or do you find it hard to understand why somebody just doesn't know that you need help, and then you become frustrated over that? Do you miss the physical intimacy you once had with a spouse or partner and feel that you'll never be able to have that again? Is it possible to have physical intimacy when you have COPD or another chronic lung condition? Again, this is a lot to think about, and it's a lot to deal with. So let's bring in Karen. How are you doing today, Karen?
Pretty good day today, Jane. How about you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Do you ever feel that you had trouble doing things and then you didn't want to ask for help? Can you talk with us a little bit about that?
Definitely. And actually, I see it from both sides because I was a caregiver for my husband who had heart issues for several years, and he hated to ask for any help. I hate to ask for help, but we both knew we needed to. Well, he used to think that I could read his mind and know that he needed help. I don't think anybody really likes to admit that they can't do something, especially if you've been independent and done things for years. And I finally learned, as he had to learn, that I had to vocalize my needs. I couldn't expect him to guess. He couldn't expect me to guess. And once you get over not wanting to ask for help, you realize it's not all that hard of a thing to do, and people want to help. And
Right.
now with Bill no longer around, he's been gone a few years now, I've had to learn to ask friends. My family doesn't live close enough to, come over and help at a moment's notice, but my friends and my neighbors do. And all I have to do is say, hey, if it's not too much trouble, I need help with this or help with that. And they're always willing. We just have to get over the fear, I guess. It's not fear. That's a wrong word. I don't know what to call it.
Facing the fact that you can't do it anymore?
Yeah.
Getting over that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's really, really helpful. When you had Bill with you,
Mhm.
and Bill had, as you said, heart problems, and then you with your COPD, which limited your breathing, were you able to maintain some intimacy with him? And what I'm asking here is, I'm not trying to ask anything really personal, but even holding hands or touching somebody in, on their arm is still touching, and that's still a form of intimacy. So can you tell us how you and Bill handled that?
Yeah, we did handle it. Started out with his heart issues. He had an implanted defibrillator, and his cardiologist was quite open with us that sometimes a defibrillator will go off and shock the person who has it implanted. He said if that were to happen when I was close to him, even just, in bed touching him, I would feel the shock as well. Well, that was kind of scary. So, but eventually, we said, okay, we're not going to live the rest of our lives not being intimate with each other.
Mhm.
And about that time, my breathing got worse. So I learned that I needed to use my rescue inhaler before I needed to be rescued. And I needed to make sure, because I use oxygen upon exertion, and having a sexual relationship, that is exertion. So I had to learn to wear my oxygen. It made me feel not too attractive, but Bill always told me it didn't matter to him. After my breast cancer, I lost a portion of one of my breasts, and he said, I didn't marry you for your breasts. I married you for who you are. And so that definitely helped.
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, we gradually learned how to make it work. Because I didn't want to lose that part. We'd been married for 52 years before he passed away. I didn't want to lose that we had with each other. And so we both worked hard at not losing it. And it's well worth the effort, really is. And if a person doesn't know, I would say, talk with your doctor, find out what's safe, what's not safe, and then be really honest and open with your partner. And yeah, I miss him and I miss that.
That's so helpful, Karen. We just want to make sure that all of our listeners know that it's still okay to express your intimacy if you check with your doctor if there's anything that can be done that is less exertion, and then you can still express yourselves that way.
And sitting on the couch and cuddling while you're watching a show or a movie, or as you said, going for a walk and holding hands, that's also expressing intimacy. Just reaching out and touching and knowing that someone cares.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's so important, and it's something that we really don't talk about enough.
Yeah, it's
So,
hard to talk about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today. That just about brings us to the end of our podcast here. Here are some key points to remember. And for this chapter, there are quite a few key points. Number one, when you have COPD, communication is essential to enjoying a good relationship with others. Two, if you have COPD, try to do what you can to contribute to life at home, but don't be afraid to ask for help. Three, if you're a caregiver or a partner for a person with COPD, allow that person to do all they can to help around the house. Number four, as human beings, we have the need to love and be loved in spite of chronic lung disease. The next one is a biggie. It's very simple, but respect and love yourself. And the last one, sexual expression comes in many forms, and it is possible to achieve with COPD or another chronic lung disease, even if you have significant shortness of breath. Giving of ourselves, our feelings, our hopes and dreams builds the kind of intimacy that relieves the stress of isolation and the agony of the disease. Loving others, caring for their needs, surprising them, even delighting them, gives our own lives meaning. I hope you can join us again next week. And remember, being diagnosed with COPD or another chronic lung disease is not a death sentence, and you're not alone. You can do this. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.